Hello everyone, my name is Sundra and I'm back with an English lesson. Before beginning today's lesson, let me remind you that you have to like this video, subscribe to my channel and share this video lesson with your friends and classmates. Today's video is a revision video. So, I'll be giving you a summarized version of the two stories that we have finished this week. We will be also discussing the question answers given at the back of each story. So, let's begin. We are studying chapter 12 Folktales and we have already finished part 1 of the chapter, which is a folktale from Philippines, right? Why the crab walks sideways, and we have also discussed the question answers and difficult words of this part. So today we will be discussing part 2, the 5 beds, and part 3, the Tajiri and the Maskini. We will also discuss the question answers given at the end of each story. Since we have already discussed the difficult words and their meanings of part 2 and part 3 as well during our online sessions, we will not discuss those in this video. However, I have given those in the notes of this video. You can check after watching this video in the description box. So now let's begin our part 2. The 5 Bits. The 5 Bits is a folk tale from Turkey. Now before beginning the story itself, let's learn a few things about the country Turkey, right? So the official name of the country is the Republic of Turkey and it is located in Middle East. Some parts of the country lies in Western Asia and a small part in Europe. Okay, so this country basically acts as a bridge between Asia and Europe. It is an intercontinental country, right? So the capital city of Turkey is Ankara and the official language is Turkish. Now let's see what this story is about. So the 5 bits. What is the meaning of bits? Do you remember? It is currency or money. So what would be the name of the story? 5 rupees in Indian terms, right? Or 5 Turkish liras in Turkish terms. So there are 3 characters in the story. The Hoja. Hoja means teacher or scholar. Okay, someone who is well respected in the society. Okay. The second one is the young man and the third one is the magistrate or the judge. The story begins with the Hoja or the teacher having a leisurely, a relaxing day. He was having a relaxing walk around and he was admiring the beauty of the nature around him. And suddenly someone slapped him from behind on the nape of his neck with so much force that he nearly fell down. He looked back and he saw a young man there whom he had never seen before in life. Now imagine being an older person and a young person slaps you whom you have never seen in life. You don't know that person. Now the Hoja is insulted and he is very angry, right? He said, "How dare you hit me?" The young man apologized quickly and said that he made an error because he thought that the Hoja was someone he knew, a good friend of his, right? And he added arrogantly that the Hoja was making a mountain out of a molehill, right? That he was trying to create a big problem out of nothing. Now the Hoja felt more insulted and now nothing less than a trial by court could satisfy him. He said that now I am going to drag you to the court, and the young man had no alternative but to accept this. They both went to the court and the magistrate there, he heard both the parties impartially. Okay, Why impartially? Because to give justice, in order to do justice, a judge has to be impartial. He should not be taking any sides. Okay? But this judge turned out to be a friend of the young man who was the offender. And the whole time the trial was going on, he kept trying to find a way to save the young man from this mess. Alright. And he kept trying to calm down the Hoja. Now the magistrate said to the Hoja, "My dear Hoja, I understand perfectly well how you are feeling right now. Anybody would feel the same under the given circumstances, given condition. Okay. So what would you say if I allow you to slap the young man back? Would you call it even? Would it be okay for you then? Would you withdraw the case then?" No, the Hoja would not be satisfied with that. He said that he had been gravely insulted and he wanted the justice done. Now there was no choice for the magistrate but to punish the young man, right? So he decided a punishment of 5 bits, right? Now the offender, the young man, had to pay a fine of 5 bits or 5 rupees to the Hoja for his damages. Now the magistrate ordered the young man to go and come back with the money and hand it over to the Hoja. Now the latter, the young man, vanished from there, right? The Hoja sat there, kept waiting and waiting for the young man to return. But time kept passing, an hour passed. Then it became 2 hours and still there was no sign of the young man. The court was about to be closed and the Hoja had understood that he was not going to get his money. So what did he do? He chose the busiest moment when the magistrate was at his busiest. Okay, because the court was closing and everyone was in hodgepodge to close the court and finish up the work on time, right? So he chose the magistrate's busiest moment and gave him a mighty slap on the nape of his neck. He said to the magistrate, "Sorry, I can't wait any longer, Your Honor. When that fellow turns up, tell him that I said you are now entitled to the 5 bits. You can collect that money on my behalf now that I have transferred my insult to you." So, did you see that a small matter was stretched so much, but still nothing came out of it, right? There was no use of so much trouble. So students, that was our story, and now let's discuss the question answers given at the end of the story. Let's ponder on page number 101. Alright, so the first question is, how did the young man react to the Hoja's anger at being slapped? The young man apologized quickly and said that he mistook the Hoja for a very good friend of his. Mistakenly, right? He further added arrogantly that the Hoja was making a mountain out of a molehill. The second question, what punishment was decided by the magistrate for the young man? The young man was ordered to pay a fine of 5 bits to the Hoja, right? Now let's move on to the next question, which is given on page number 103, and the number of question is question number 4. There are 3 parts of this question, A, B and C. So this is an RTC, a reference to context. So there is one line given here. Would you then call it even? Okay. So who said this line to whom? The magistrate said this to the Hoja, right? Part B, what does it refer to? It refers to the slab that was delivered by the young man to the Hoja, right? Part C, what was the listener's response to this question? The listener said that he had been gravely insulted and he wanted justice done. So that was all for our part 2. The story is the 5 bits, right? You have to write these question answers in your fair notebook. Okay, now let's begin our third story, which is the Tajiri and the Maskini. Let's begin. Now, before beginning this story, the Tajiri and the Maskini, by the way, the meaning of the title is the rich man and the poor man. The Tajiri means the rich man and the Maskini means the poor man, right? This story is a folktale from Kenya, right? Now, let's learn a few things about Kenya. The official name of the country is the Republic of Kenya, okay, and it is located in Eastern Africa. And the capital city, which is also the largest city of this country, is Nairobi. And the official language of this country is English and Swahili. Swahili is also the national language of Kenya. There are two main characters in the story, the Tajiri, the rich man, and the Maskini, the poor man. There is also the village chief, who is a side character, right? So, this story is about a rich man, how he lives, and a poor man, how the poor man lives, right? So, let's begin the story. The Tajiri, who was a very rich man, used to sit down for a very hearty meal every single evening. Okay, he had a hearty, a wholesome, a complete dinner. Okay, and this dinner was cooked for him in his kitchen, right? And he was so rich that he could afford such kind of meal, right? And the food that was left over after he ate would have been enough to feed a whole family, right? But this man, the Tajiri, he was extremely stingy, means he was very miser. He was not generous at all, and he could not bear to share his food with anyone else. Okay, he would not share his food with anyone else. He wanted to keep everything to himself even if he could not eat it. Now the Tajiri had a neighbor. The neighbor was the Maskini, or the poor man. The poor man used to earn very less money. The only thing that he owned was a goat. And the goat used to give him milk and cheese. That was his only source of income. He was so poor that he could not afford even 2 square meals. And in evening, he would just have a bowl of porridge. The porridge is a very bland food. It doesn't taste much, right? So imagine eating porridge every single day. But the Maskini had found a way to make it more enjoyable. He would eat his meal while hiding outside the Tajiri's kitchen, where wonderful smells came wafting through the open window. They made the Maskini's mouth water, and the porridge seemed like a feast. This kept going on daily. Now, one evening, the Tajiri decided to take a walk in his garden in order to work up an appetite for dinner. Okay, so that he would be able to have his dinner. Alright, So he saw the Maskini sitting outside the kitchen window. Now, as the Tajiri watched, he saw the Maskini inhale deeply, and a blissful look came over his face. How dare he help himself to my smells? Thought the Tajiri, and he ordered his servants to seize the Maskini and take him to the village jail. The Tajiri was so miserly that he could not even bear to share the smell of his food, let alone the food itself. The poor Maskini was locked in the village jail for smelling the food. Now, this case was presented in front of the court, the village council, right? The village council used to decide the matters of the village about its progress and what punishment should be given for which crime, all right, these kinds of things. And they used to meet every week, right? So the poor man was locked inside the jail, and a few days later, when the village council met, they called him, they summoned him before the court, and they asked what was the matter. The Tajiri explained that he was stealing, the Maskini was stealing the smells from his kitchens, and the smells that belonged to the Tajiri, and he was depriving him of those smells by stealing them. So as payment, he demanded the Maskini's goat, which was the only thing that he owned. Now, after hearing the Tajiri's side, the village council asked the Maskini to present his case. But the Maskini was so afraid to speak that he could look only very sad, and he kept staring at his feet, at the ground, okay, and he kept shuffling his feet only, right? He was very afraid to speak. Now, the village elders who had been hearing the case, they went to the shade of a nearby tree, and after a brief discussion, the village chief, she came out and she addressed the crowd, right? She said that it is true that the Maskini had taken the smell from the kitchen of the Tajiri, right? But he had not taken any food from there. So the Tajiri would not be given the goat, but he was welcome to smell the goat anytime he wanted. The Tajiri was so furious that he left without saying a word. Okay, but the village people, they appreciated the judgment, and they thought that justice had been done there. Do you think the justice had been done there? Did you see how the poor man, the Maskini, was happy within what he had, right? And the Tajiri, the rich man, was not even happy with all the things he had, and he was so greedy that he wanted to take what small thing his neighbor had, the Maskini had, right? But greed is never rewarded, right? So that was our story. Now let's discuss the question answers that are given at the end of the story on page number 103. Let's ponder question number 1. How did the porridge seem like a feast for the Maskini? The Maskini would eat his meal while hiding outside the Tajiri's kitchen, where wonderful smells came wafting through the open window. They made the Maskini's mouth water, and the porridge seemed like a feast. What was the final decision announced by the village chief for the Tajiri and the Maskini? The village chief said that the Maskini had helped himself to the smells from the Tajiri's kitchen, but he had not taken any food from there. So the Tajiri would not be given the goat. However, he could smell the goat anytime he wanted. Now here is the last question of this chapter that you have to answer, right? Question number 5 on page number 103. This question is an RTC, a reference to context, and here is a line. You have to read this line and answer the given question. There are 3 questions given here. The line is, he saw the Maskini inhale deeply and a blissful look came over his face. So the first question, who is he here? Okay, so the Tajiri has been referred to as he here, right? Question number 2, what was the Maskini doing? The Maskini was sitting outside the Tajiri's kitchen where wonderful smells came wafting through the open window and they made the Maskini's mouth water, right? And the third question, how did the observer react to this act of the Maskini? The observer, the Tajiri, thought that how dare he help himself to my smells, right? And he ordered his servants to seize the Maskini and take him to the village jail. So these are the 2 stories that we have studied in this week, and now I have given you the summarized versions here along with the discussion of question answers. Now you have to write all these question answers in your fair register, alright, and you can also check the description box for today's notes as well, right? So students, that was it for today, and I'll be back with another video next week. Till then, take care of yourselves. Bye.